Well, hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the 360 Podcast. Fascinating conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Tim Braheem. And as always, my goal is to bring wisdom and education to your business and to your life by bringing fascinating subject matters and guests into this forum. And this particular month, I have a great deal of intimacy with these two guests. Julie Weix and Scott Bertone are the two other primary coaches for Performance Experts Coaching. I've been working with them for the 7 years, actually, the three of us have been together, and I've been working with Julie for a total of 10. I'm really blessed to call both of them friends and to work with them and get to experience on a consistent basis their wisdom as coaches. Let me tell you a little bit about both of them. Julie has been an executive coach for Performance Experts since 2013, and she co-facilitates the Leadership 360 program with me. Her deep business and coaching experience, combined with her ability to listen deeply and ask really insightful and thought-provoking questions, enables her to support clients in identifying the challenges that they're finding in their business and in their personal success. And she brings a background in leadership and team management, process management, communication, skills, et cetera, to support her clients and their teams. She's passionate about supporting people and bringing the best selves to the work and to their home life, and leveraging team members' skill sets to produce excellent results. Julie, like myself and Scott, has a master's degree in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. She graduated from there in 2014. And after joining Performance Experts in 2013, she's developed extensive mortgage industry experience. I mean, it begs to mention that both Julie and Scott are coaches to some of the top loan originators in the United States. And we're very blessed to be working with the people that we work with in the L360 family. So their level of knowledge and wisdom and experience in coaching these folks for closing in on a decade now is extensive. Scott Bertone is also an executive coach for Performance Experts. He has a bachelor's degree in science and business management and a master's of the arts in spiritual psychology. He is, like Julie, a certified coach. So they both have their coaching certification curriculum that was completed. He joined us in 2016, so about 6.5, almost 7 years now. And some interesting facts about Scott. He was an intern for an extended period of time under President Clinton. He was on President Clinton's advance team in the White House, setting up events for the president in advance before the president would come into town. He started several businesses, including a motorcycle internet business back. And Scott's an entrepreneur. I mean, so his variety of businesses is quite impressive and quite fun to read off. He started a motorcycle internet business back when he was in his 20s, a coffee business. He's owned his own mortgage company. He has his own coaching practice now. He's an avid and fanatical Pittsburgh Steelers fan and loves talking about the Steelers, as well as business, politics, psychology, technology. He's also a really strong tech guy. In fact, Scott's the guy that I go to on our team if I need tech help. He was a computer hacker when he was younger. And he's just an all-around great guy, and Julie's an all-around great lady. So without further ado, I'm super excited to welcome into the 360 Podcast Forum my two colleagues and very good friends, Scott Bertone and Julie Weix. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.
We're going to be together a lot. I was thinking about this yesterday. We're going to be together a lot in the next couple of weeks, right? We got a couple of retreats coming, one next week here in SoCal and then one in NoCal in May. It's going to be fun hanging out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to both, especially Malibu and this time of year is beautiful.
Yeah, Julie, it'll be your return to California from your days of having lived here for a long time. It'll be nice to have you back in sunny SoCal for a few days.
It'll be not only nice to be there, but also good to get away from the humidity we have here in Austin today. So I'm excited for the ocean and to see you both.
Right on. Let's dive in. I mean, let's not mess around. I mean, we know each other. We don't need to go through the pleasantries. We've been working together for a long time. We have lots of fun together, and we're really lucky to be able to work with amazing clients and do amazing work with them. So, I mean, I think that the first question begs, gang, like, you know, what is coaching? Like, to me, that I think that's really important to define, because I think that people have I think everybody has their own definition for it, and I don't know that it actually should be so broad. I think that there's like some very specific things in my viewpoint that encompass what coaching is and why someone would want to have a coach. So Jules, we're going to go ladies first and start with you. Define it. What's coaching in your vernacular? How do you look at it?
Sure. So to me, coaching is a client and coach coming together to help the client achieve their goals, get roadblocks and limiting beliefs out of the way, and essentially help that person get to where they want to go. And there's some people that probably haven't experienced coaching or don't understand what it is. It's a conversation where two people come together in a long-term relationship and help the client get to where they want to go, have more of whatever they're looking for: happiness, success, fulfillment. And a lot of people intermingle therapy or mentoring or consulting, and it can get a little fuzzy depending on it. But as the three of us roll, it's seeing the client as having all their own answers and help them removing blocks to living what they're looking for in their life and achieving success in their terms.
Yeah. How do you, I'll hold the question, toss it over to you, Scotty, and see if you have anything to add to that. But then I want to circle back to something you said. So how about you, Scott? Do you define it the same way, or do you have a different definition?
I think Julie, defined it really well. I think coaching has always been, associated with, say, high performance or athletics. And, as we go along and coaching has, say, evolved as a profession and a thing that say more normal people do, we each now have access to be able to live our lives professionally and personally with a coach and somebody that can help us, really see what's possible inside of us, and also, be like a best friend, a mentor, a bullshit, caller outer, somebody that can really help us, live the best version of ourselves. And, I heard what coach that I was training under one point, he said that coaches do work similar to a sculptor. Michelangelo said that, he saw the actual, when he was sculpting, he would see a piece of rock and or whatever he was using, and he would pull out of that rock the full realization of that sculpture. And I think that's what coaches do, is that we help people become the best version of themselves, and it's moving it away from just athletics or high performance into high performance at work and high performance in your life.
Yeah, so back in the day when I first started Performance Experts 12 years ago now, I guess it's been, I used Michelangelo's quote that I saw. He was referring to the David, the famous sculpture of the David. I saw the figure in the stone, and I carved to set him free. And I think that that's a really great metaphor for coaching. Julie, you actually shared two things in your definition that I'd like to unpack a little bit further. The first is the removal of blocks, right? Like, so all of us as human beings in our business and our personal life run into roadblocks. And it can be really helpful to have someone help us move through that, right? So we can move the next rung on the ladder, if you will, like in our life and in our business. So the first part of the question is, what does that mean to like help someone remove blocks? What is done by a coach to help in that way? And then the second thing is you use the term limiting beliefs. I'd like you to define that a little bit more, because I think that's super important. And we do spend a lot of time with clients on limiting beliefs as well. And the two may work hand in hand, but take over.
Sure. So during my coach training program, there was an awesome term used called break in transparency. So what is a break in transparency? It's living my life with some transparent belief, something that I believe to be true about the world, and coaches help clients have a break in transparency, meaning see something I didn't know was there. So the idea of blocks or having things that we believe, I may go about my day thinking a certain thing. You heard me joke about it's really humid here in Texas. That might not be visible to somebody else. And so when a coach helps somebody see something, it may be invisible to them, or it may just be how they see the world. And within the coaching the three of us do, we use the term perceptual filter. Out in the world, the reticular activating system is another scientific term. What is it? My perceptual filter may believe something, and a coach may help me realize either it's not true, that belief isn't serving me, or what might be possible if I let it go. So to your question, what is a block? It's something that a person can be holding as true in their lives, something that as they're looking at the world, they think things are that way. For example, a bank teller is always a jerk. Or when I'm working with a client in the mortgage space, the clients are always delayed. That may or may not be true, but if I look at the world through that as fact, I'm going to see the world a certain way. And so I know I've shared a few different terms, so I'm going to try to tie it together. A person who's not coached can start to let those beliefs create their reality, and their reality may get small. And what I've found is, as my coach helps me remove blocks, I have more freedom in my life and I have more choice as to how I proceed. So I said a lot. Is there anything you want me to clarify?
No, let me jump in and give a very specific example of something that's true for me. I don't think I've ever shared this with either one of you, but when I was early in my career, I was in my late 20s. It's about maybe my third year in the business. First 3 years, I was trying really hard to cultivate realtor relationships and was very subservient in the relationship, like running around doing listing flyers, taking photos of houses, helping them with their marketing, probably doing things that weren't even RESPA compliant, if we're being totally honest at the time, but I didn't know any better. And I got beat up. I got really beat up to the point where there was one particular high-end agent that just abused me in a big way. And when I say that, that sounds very victim-y. I let him abuse me is the fact, out of my own insecurity. But I mean, he totally stripped me of my confidence in myself. I won't get into the rabbit hole of what happened, but it was, whenever I tell people the story, they're like, wow, you did all that shit for him. That's crazy that you were that much of a slave to him. So then I whiplashed, right? So I developed this belief that you're talking about, this roadblock. And the belief was all realtors are assholes. All realtors are ungrateful. All realtors are fill in the blank, but nothing really good, right? And I became steadfast in my belief that I don't need realtors. I'm not going to work with them. I'm going to prove to myself that I don't need them. That's when I started really working my database hard and all of that kind of stuff. And for about a 2-3 year stretch, 96, 97, 98, when there were refis, I didn't really work with any realtors. And then 99 happened and rates went up and I didn't have any realtors and I was in trouble. And it was at that time that I started to really work with the reframing of this belief that you're talking about, that all realtors, this sweeping overview, are not cool. And I started to recalibrate the way that I viewed real estate agents and started to go after real estate agents that I knew I had common denominators with, real estate agents that love to play golf. And then I'd play golf with them and I realized, this guy's a cool guy, and we'd become friends. And then he'd start referring business to me. So I did that with some help of a coach and some of my own doing for my own personal self-exploration. But that's another example to really anchor in what you're talking about, Jules, that, we all walk around with belief structures that influence the way we see the world and influence our behaviors. And sometimes a coach is there to hold up the mirror and say, hey, do you see what's happening here and how this might be actually limiting your capacity and capabilities? Scott, do you want to add anything to that before I move to the next question for you guys?
No, I think you really, I'd say, mortgageized it really well in the terms of how it applies. I think that the negative beliefs and what holds people back, there's nothing, I don't think, more powerful than that. And when we can help strip those away, I think the difference between success and somebody being there stuck in fear or stuck in doubt, it all boils down to what they believe they can do or not do.
Can I add?
Yeah, beliefs are big. Go ahead, Jules.
I think a big piece that I see in our coaching programs is that people don't realize they have these things. And until they are, as Scott just said, a block or a limiting belief is brought forward, it can be very eye-opening. And I think in people's, for our 20s and our 30s in life, we may not see limiting beliefs, but as we come upon roadblocks, as we have churn or friction in relationships, somebody who is coached can have the coach hold up the mirror and ask this question. Do you believe it's true that all realtors are such and such? And then that client may need to take a day or a week to think through it. So they're not obvious at times, but it's a coach that's the brave ally that can ask that question in the space of the coaching relationship. And I think that really distills down what is coaching, somebody that's going to help you on your path and help you live more effectively and live more happily based on that wisdom and that learning.
Thank you. That's a great summary. Let's regress for a moment. Not that this is a regressionary topic, but I think I kind of leaped over something. I want to know a little bit about your history as a coach. So how long have you been coaching for? And what got you into it? Just give us a brief overview. Julie, we'll start with you and then we'll go to you, Scott.
Super. So I started training as a coach in 2012. So 10 years ago. I've been coaching since early 2013. What was the rest of your question? What got me into it?
Yeah, what got you into it? Yeah.
I was in a corporate role where I very much sensed that people weren't living their best lives at this Fortune 50 company. And I got clear that if I were to stay at this company, I probably would be going down that path. So I hired a coach and really got clear on my passion of helping people grow and develop to live lives they love. And when that popped, I realized it wasn't going to be at this company that I would stay. And I left, did a coach training program, got my master's degree in spiritual psychology. And through a series of events, I met you, I believe in 2013. So it became a desire of mine to follow a path that felt more authentic to who I was and what I was doing in the world. And I guess my soul became aware that that company wasn't going to create fulfillment as I'd hoped my life would go. So I changed my life path and here we are.
Very cool. And it suits your personality, I think, for sure. To be a great coach, you have to ask a lot of questions, good questions, which I think you're exceptional at. And also be able to hold in presence for people, make them feel really safe to be able to go inside and uncover what's getting in the way of their success being achieved. And I think that's another thing. And in fact, I just want to just show a quick little photo here of you because, it's good to see you in action. Here's Julie on retreat in Costa Rica. She looks like she's in mid-thought there with Lisa Fleck and David Goldstein, both who work for Celebrity, sitting next to her. What were you thinking there, Julie? Do you have any idea what was happening there in that moment?
I was thinking, wow, we just had such a good masterminding time in the pool. We've got to get through this business segment to get back out and swim, probably.
Right on. So Scott, let's go over to you, man. What got you into coaching? Tell us a little bit about your career path, bro. And I know that maybe you want to also talk a little bit about your mortgage experience too, because I think that has an impact on your success as a coach.
Well, for me, Tim, I think I've been a coach my whole life. I think that's what, as I trace it back and think about that question, I was always the person that people came to and talked to and wanted to get advice from and, sort through their kind of mind chatter. And I didn't know that it was going to be my calling. I didn't know it was going to be the thing that I would eventually find as, what I wanted to do when I grew up. I had the similar path as Julie in a sense of the timing. I did my coach training right around the same time as Julie did, and then got into coaching right around 2013. But really, the person that pointed it out in my life of, hey, would you ever consider coaching or would you ever be a coach was you. When we went through our program at USM, you asked me at one point, you said, would you ever consider being a coach? And I had never considered that as a profession or as a thought or even, had any kind of focus on that until you asked me that question. And it really launched me into me exploring that and figuring out what, would that be a viable path for me? And the more I explored it and the more I leaned into it, I realized again that, it was kind of my calling from the very beginning. I remember sitting on the playground as a young kid, really sitting and instead of playing, sitting there talking to somebody that's having an issue or a problem, helping them sort through it. And I did that a lot to the point where, I probably, didn't play as much as I should have, but I don't know why I was always compelled to do it. But I always was. And, now it's just been an amazing transition from coming out of the mortgage industry, which I was at the time. I was in the mortgage industry, I had my own mortgage company, And I was a broker, and I had a couple offices, and we're launching into multiple states, and then the mortgage meltdown happened, and moved and went with my old partner and opened up a branch at a retail shop, and but I never found the passion like I found when you asked me that question, and so I couldn't dive back into mortgage and in the same way that I originally thought, because I had this new awakening that coaching might be the way I have to go. And the harder I tried in mortgage, the less satisfied I was. And so, coaching just became the only option for me.
Very cool. And incidentally, that story was super important because now it explains why you suck at tetherball.
Actually, I was a tetherball champion in my grade school, by the way.
I bet you were. You and Napoleon Dynamite, man, just knocking that ball around in circles with no one else standing there.
Kickball and tetherball were my sports, brother.
Yeah. So let's get into. Let's talk a little bit about clients, not specifically, of course, for confidentiality reasons, but I mean, you guys have a lot of tenure now between the two of you, 18 years of coaching experience. And, we're fortunate. We coach some of the most dynamic, amazing, impressive loan originators in the United States through the L360 program. I mean, it's a proverbial all-star list that we've been graced with coaching. So we've learned a lot from coaching them. And what I'm really looking for, I'm going to give you this one first, Scott, is what's an area in one's business or life that you see them struggle with the most? It could be either business or life. And why do you think that they have a challenge in implementing in this particular area? Like what's underneath the hood when it comes to that?
So I think as I push through that, I have a few different scenarios coming to my mind, but I'll go to the life side of things, because like you shared, we have a lot of really talented people that we coach, and I think the one thing that they're really great at is business. They know how to do this business. They've mastered, say, the science of being successful in the mortgage industry. I think the thing that I see a lot of people struggle with is how to live the rest of their life in a way that brings that joy, fulfillment. That when you talk about the Leadership 360 program, for example, you talk about that feeling of fullness. And I think at least in the beginning, when people come to us and start coaching, they are successful originators. They are successful at running a business. But they struggle with running a business and having a successful and happy life. And I think that's really where we help them the most. And I think that's really where most people, I would say, at least again in the beginning when they come to us, is where they struggle, is having that balance where they feel fulfilled, where they feel like their life has a real purpose other than being addicted to being great at business.
It goes back. You guys, I'm sure, remember this well. We had a guest speaker in Park City, Utah for our master's retreat a few years back named Chip Conley. And for those of you who don't know who Chip is, you could check him out. He's written many best-selling books and has some very profound thoughts that I thought were really valuable. And one of the things that he shared with us as a group is he said, the first half of life is about attainment, and the second half of life is about attunement. And let's unpack that a little bit further before I give the same question over to you, Julie. Maybe this will tee you up a little bit. Maybe you'll go in a different direction. Maybe you'll choose a business topic if you'd like, or stick with the personal. But, people are very focused. When you think about it, you get in your, college years, you graduate from college, probably go out and party a little bit and have some fun in most people's cases, because you're finally done with school. And then at some point in time, you're like in your early to mid 20s and you say, all right, now it's time to get serious. And you dive in, and the first thing that goes usually is friendships. Because there's only so many hours in the day, right? So now all of a sudden you go from working part-time and studying, in the 11th hour, and then, to cram for your test, to now you got to go to work 5 days a week. And in today's day and age, you're probably working more than 40 hours. And the first thing you let go of is friendships, right? They start to dwindle as you get in your late 20s, early 30s. and maybe develop a new tribe of work friends because you see them every day. And then you meet a partner and you have some kids. And before you know it, you just don't have enough time for yourself. You don't have enough time for friendships. You don't have enough time for play. You don't have enough time to take good care of yourself. And you're killing it because you're making a lot of money all of a sudden if you've been a successful loan originator, but there's all these other things that have kind of drifted out of your life focus, right? And we find that a lot, don't we? And a part of what the coaching is to help people rediscover some of that and to find that equilibrium, right? Like there's a trade-off. Yesterday I interviewed Dirk Novell, who is a client of ours, and I'm sure that you'll end up hearing the podcast. It'll air a little bit after this one, but I think Dirk's done a really great job of making some tough choices, right? Like he's chosen to not chase the high production numbers in exchange for having his farm, in exchange for living in Sun Valley, Idaho a couple of years in a row and going skiing, in exchange for coaching his kids' teams. I mean, those are choices, aren't they? That people are faced with, and sometimes it's a tough choice, but it's a choice nonetheless that we have. Are we going to choose balance or are we going to choose more money? Right. So I'm glad you brought that point up. Julie, over to you. Same question.
And reframe the question. It's what gets in the way that we find most often with our clients
in business or personal. What's a typical thing that you see people struggle with, right? Like, and why do you think they struggle with it?
I think a piece that transcends business and personal is having conflict in relationships. And I guess what I mean by conflict is saying something, whether to an employee, a manager, a spouse, that could go against that person's beliefs or that could create conflict. And I think most people, and especially most salespeople, are wired to get people to say yes, to have positive interactions, for the energy to be exchanged positively between them. And so when there's something conflicting, that isn't a skill that we've all been taught. And so very often I work with clients on what are the beliefs you're holding about bringing up this source of discontent, or what do you believe will happen if you give this employee constructive feedback? And I guess in closing, the freedom that comes from expressing oneself, asking for what we need, talking about an elephant in the room creates maximum freedom for people that are brave enough to do it. But that's a very popular topic people bring to coaching sessions is, what do I do with this problem employee? Or what do I do with this issue that I'm afraid to bring up?
Just taking out a note here for the post-coaching segment of this podcast, because you just hit on such a juicy topic, right? So the thing is, what I'm hearing you say is the average loan originator as a salesperson is wired to say all the right things, right? To get people to say yes to them and to schmooze and smooth things over, and to get that conversation to a point that is a paycheck, a relationship, all of that. And the blind spot for them can be to have the difficult conversations, the ones that might not end up being so friendly. So what do they do in that situation, Julie? Do they just stuff it down and avoid? Is that what you see them do? And what kind of problems does that create with the choice that they make, whatever that is, to not be authentic and real and brave?
Sure. So I think we're all wired, myself included, wired for harmony, wanting to have positive interactions. So what do they do? I think initially we all either stuff it down or distract or come up with reasons why it's not a good idea to bring it up. And then once the pressure builds in the tire in such a way that this needs to be brought up, most people don't necessarily have skills and strategies to bring it up in a way that won't explode that tire or harm the relationship. So in a coaching session, the questions I as a coach ask are around that idea of what limiting beliefs, or what are you believing about this situation? If you bring this up with your spouse, what are you afraid will happen? Or what have you done in the past that's worked and not worked? So in the coaching conversation, we explore what they feel, what they're thinking, what the past experiences were, and then we co-create what they might do differently to have a different result. A a lot of people had conflicting challenges growing up where they got in trouble, they got grounded, they got hit. So sometimes they could have such fear about it, or they could say, if this happens, my spouse will never speak to me again. So then, as you both very well know, we unpack it. Is it true? And how might you go about this? What could you do to set up the conversation? So we explore and ultimately come up with a game plan to have the conversation. If it's with an employee, I very often will be heard by my clients saying, you've got to bring it up now because it's not going to go away. And so I'll even convince that person or teach that person as a leader how to go about it. And then going forward, how to keep the relationship clean, having a monthly check-in, congratulating the person before you come down on them, or being open and real such that that relationship stays clean and stays harmonious. And the final thing I'll say, as we all well know, is if once one person in a relationship is feeling friction, the other person likely is too. So the brave person who brings it forward and shares openly is giving the other person a gift, because rarely is there friction on only one side of a relationship. And 100% of the time, people come back and say, wow, I'm glad we did that. It might have been uncomfortable, but we got to a new understanding. And that's bravery and authentic sharing, which is a hallmark of coaching.
Awesome. Scotty, I'm going to come over to you in a moment with your beliefs on fear and how it's a great motivator. But real quick before I do, just to prepare you for that so you could get to thinking about that, Scott, I want to just say, Julie, I'm going to quote you because you say this often, this phrase that I think applies to what you were just sharing, which is how we do one thing is how we do everything. Yeah. Okay. And we see that as a pattern in not only all of our clients, but within ourselves. Right. So to use the example that you're using right now of maybe somebody who is having a difficult time authentically sharing and giving direct feedback as an example to an employee, as a leader, that's their job. And it's only fair for the employee to know where they stand. If they're avoiding that conversation, once you unpack what the reason is that they're avoiding it, let's just say because they don't want to fall out of favor or not be liked, okay, which is a common reason. You can trail that to other areas of their life, and it's usually showing up there too. They're not giving direct feedback to their kids. They're not giving direct feedback to their parents. They're not drawing proper boundaries in their life. So it's like it becomes this rabbit hole. And if you can just shift that one thing in someone's life, you could change the person's life radically for the better in their business and in their personal life, which is why we coach the whole person. I mean, we've never taken the approach with performance experts of just coaching people on business because it's futile, because that business is just one segment of life. We got to coach the entirety of one's behavioral patterns and their personality to be able to have them have success in all areas of life. Scott, let's go to fear. We spent a lot of time in the L360 program in particular on the subject matter of fear because of the impact that it has on the decisions that we make in our life, what we avoid. But I know that you are a big fan of using fear as a great motivator and using leverage to create change. Share with us a little bit about that. How do you work with people on that? And give us a little backstory as to why it's important too.
Sure. So, if you think about anything that we do in our lives, there's two sources of motivation, right? You got pleasure and you have pain. You have the fear of something, or you have the want of something. And what I've found is that, if you think about how we developed as a species, one of the things that was driving us is our ability to be afraid in the future of what might happen. So we would make all kinds of changes or do different things around the idea of fear. And so fear is the greatest motivator in the sense that I used to stand in front of audiences, small audiences, and ask, do a little simple experiment. Simple experiment was I had a little basketball hoop, and I would have it wouldn't be very far away of a little ball, and you throw the ball in, and I say, if you make that basket, I'll give you $1 million. And it was super simple, but if you make the basket, you get $1 million, or if you don't make the basket, somebody's going to cut off your hand. Would you choose to throw that ball in the hoop every single time? And nobody, even though it was a very simple task, nobody would say, I would choose to cut off my hand. Why? It's the $1 million was the pleasure, but the fear of losing your hand was so great that it would motivate people not to do it. So I know that if we can take fear and what fear is a motivator, if we can use fear to motivate somebody into doing something, it is much more powerful than say the what they want to get. And I'll give you an example in this way. So if, for example, I can help you understand that if you want something and the fear of not doing something is greater than the fear of doing it, then you're not going to do it. But if you want something bad enough, and I can help you build up and understand if you don't take those actions to get that it's going to be actually detrimental for you, then you will take action on it. And I'll give you an example in a very, very personal way. So I had a client who wanted to do better in his health. For example, he wanted to lose weight, get exercise, and time after time he wasn't doing it, until at one point he had a mild heart attack, and that heart attack brought forward so many different emotions on what he was going to lose if he didn't take himself seriously. There was nothing that would stop him from doing the things that he was going to do to become healthy, because now the fear of not being there for his kids, his wife being alone, literally losing his life were so great that now that fear became an amazingly powerful motivator that nothing else before then could have done. And so, I see that if we can use fear as a great motivator and the leverage of wanting something and utilizing fear, there's no force more powerful for us as a human species than using fear. And you can see it in different things, and media uses fear for us to get us to click on things, to watch things, to be afraid of certain events. And it is the most powerful force, in my opinion, on change.
Beautiful answer. And yeah, we like to refer to it as using fear as your friend, right? I mean,
yeah, that's a term you've used quite often, actually.
It's if you can play with that fear and use it as a motivating force, it can really be a catalyst for change that could be very impactful. I'm going to transition over to you, Julie, and I want to ask about leadership. I know both of you are incredibly passionate about the subject matter of leadership and do a lot of coaching in that capacity. Let's just start with you, Julie, then I'll have you answer the same question. Scott, what are the qualities that you revere in great leaders, Julie? And what do our viewers, our listeners here need to keep in mind when it comes to leading fully in their business and in their life?
Qualities I revere in leaders. Let's keep in mind in terms of our DISC assessments, which is a personality assessment, I like connection as a high S. I really like leaders that are connective, that are open and authentic and admit weaknesses, admit challenges when they have them to show their humanity. And then also I really appreciate a leader that wants to bring everybody alongside them as we move. And so with the leadership coaching Scott and I do, there's actually 8 leadership competencies. And I think some of them, in addition to what I shared that I revere, are integrity, having a clear vision, and supporting team members. So those are 3 more universal leadership qualities that I think are super important. And when I'm led in a way that lands for me, I would run through walls for the leaders for whom I work. So when there's a connection, when I feel supported, when I feel they're being open and honest, it really connects with me in a deep way.
And why is it that let's unpack that a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to actually coach you a little bit here. All right. So I'm going to ask you an open-ended question. Okay. So you defined a bunch of things that really resonate for you and your personality. I heard, that they're open, they're vulnerable, they're honest, they communicate vulnerably, and that has you feeling closer to them. What else does it have you feel, and why do you think that those virtues, those personality traits, really have an impact on you?
It's a great question. And I could feel, as you were sharing that, the idea that when somebody connects with me, when somebody creates a bridge and inspires me and acts in the way that my values land, open, real, supportive, collaborative, I feel that I'm being seen and understood and being, let's say, encouraged forward or being supported toward a goal. So why do I think they're important to me? Because I feel seen and heard and understood. And I feel like if a leader's leading in the value set that we commonly share or tapping into my values, I feel inspired. I'll stay up all night and work on something when I feel that I'm being led and the things I'm doing are in connection with who I am. And I shared at the very beginning when I was in a corporate role at a Fortune 100, I did not feel connection. I felt like it was more transactional. It was more get it done for the shareholders or get it done because consumers are going to see it. It felt very outside of me and very, very distant. But when I'm considered and when people bridge to my style, I feel alive and I feel inspired to do work.
Yeah, it makes me think of there's a video clip that we show on retreat often of Simon Sinek, who I would imagine most of the listeners know who that is by now. He had the famous TED Talks. It starts with why, but he also has one on leadership, and he talks about the Marine and how they eat last. The general or whatever eats last. And what I'm hearing you describe here is the natural tendency of human beings to want to reciprocate. So what I'm hearing you say, Julie, is, and please, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so I want you to validate this, but if a leader first leads by showing that you can trust them, that you're vulnerable, that you're reliable, and that you really care, and you really care about your people, that you don't really have to do anything else, that the people are going to tend to respond in kind by wanting to reciprocate and give 110% to that leader because of how that leader made them feel, right?
Absolutely. And in that Sinek video, I think he said the leader that didn't get food left the meal line with nothing on his plate, and the people that worked for him gave him their food because they saw that he needed it. And so it's that reciprocal caring and the connecting with the person at a deeper level. Mm-hmm. Consider what would happen if nobody liked that leader. He probably would have gone hungry, but the people cared enough and wanted to reciprocate. So that level of caring and connection was there. And I think that's what some leaders miss, is they think they have to drive toward the goal. They have to be so focused on the goal. They sometimes miss connecting with the humans. And at the end of the day, statistics show that people don't leave a company, they leave a manager. So if that manager or that leader can show caring and show connection, it's a game changer.
You know, it's funny, as you were saying that, something just popped into my head. I was thinking, I was just recently, as you guys know, a couple of weeks ago in Arizona at the executive meetings for Celebrity. And, I had some outsiders, if you will, people who are not in the L360 family. Once again, as always happens, inquire about, hey, what is this L360 thing all about? I mean, I see you guys are so close, and there's this camaraderie, and there's this way that you guys talk and the way that you interact with each other that's really intriguing. And I got that a few times, and I just connected some dots right now in your answer, Julie, which is that I think that we do this very well, with the three of us, meaning I don't think I've ever associated it with leadership, but I think that's exactly what it is. So we bring to that program our A+ game, our whole heart, and every bit of our love and fabric in our being, our blood and sweat, in terms of the time we spend organizing it. And we don't really have to ask for much when you think about it to get the reciprocation of the group. Like, the thing that's amazing about the group is that they all help each other. They all care about each other. They're all like selfless towards each other. But I think that that's because we just have to ask really one time, when you think about it, on retreat on the first night, to commit to being completely selfless and helping of each other. We never really even have to bring it up again. But I think it's because the tone has been set. And I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back here. I'm just using this as an example. And I do think we deserve a little credit, because I think what we do is pretty freaking awesome. But I mean, like, we bring everything that we can, and then the rest kind of takes care of itself. So from a leadership perspective, if as a leader, one of the things that I would encourage you to do, if you're listening here, is just take a step back and say, am I giving, my A game to my team? Am I hearing them? Am I seeing them? Am I respecting them fully? Because if you're not, you're probably not getting 100% of your capability out of your teammates, because they don't have the motivation of reciprocity that Julie's talking about.
Yeah.
Scott, go. Let's not forget about you, man. Talk to us about leadership in the same context. Let's riff on this.
Well, I think what you guys riffed on just now was really spot on. I would add a couple things that came to me as I was hearing you guys talk about it. The things that stand out to me is vision, focus, trust, belief, and accountability. And the reason why I put all that is because, say, vision. I think a leader really needs to have a great foresight as to where we're going to go. I think the leader has to have focus in a sense of they're really involved in making sure that the team is doing what they should be doing and supported in the way that they should be doing, and they're professionally leading. They're not part-time leading and doing a bunch of other things on the side. So I find that distraction is difficult for many teams. Trust that the fact that they trust their team members, the folks that they're leading, to be really good at what they do and help them do it. And then the belief, which I think is really important, which is trust and belief going hand in hand. And then finally, that accountability. One of the things that I see people that I admire in great leaders, and I see leaders that struggle, is that they have a hard time holding people accountable to the things that they agreed to. They agreed that person was going to take responsibility for, and I think it's a disservice. We are there to be, the leaders there to be a good cheerleader, but they're also there to hold their team accountable to be the best version of themselves that's possible. And I think that whenever somebody believes in you and also holds you accountable, you can accomplish great things. And without all of that kind of all wrapped into one, I think leadership can break down in multiple levels.
I know that you're a fan, both of you are a fan. I'll stick with you, Scott, on this as a follow-up. I'm going to screw this up here. The difference between agreements and commitments, is that right?
No. So the difference between agreements and expectations.
Expectations. Can you define that, please? Because I think this fits right into what you were sharing.
Yeah, I mean, an agreement's a pretty easy thing, right? I mean, you can have a written agreement. There's an agreement is usually associated to, say, a business transaction or a business deal, but expectations are usually what I feel inside you should be doing, and I've not fully communicated that, and you haven't necessarily understood it or even agreed to it yourself. That's what you should be doing. So that's an expectation that usually starts at the level of family. We expect our family or our friends even to be a certain way because it's what we feel instead of what we've agreed to. And so we want to say, okay, what are all the expectations? And I hear people say this all the time. I want to communicate my expectations to my employees. And I say, why don't you actually shift that languaging to say, how about you guys create some strong agreements so that you can have a respectful conversation with that person. Say, this is the things that I need to accomplish and we need to accomplish as a team. Can you agree? And how would we do those together? And if we agree, then now we have something to stand on that we can always point back to and say, here's our agreement. Either A, you're doing an amazing job, or B, hey, it's falling short. What do you need? Or what can we do to get you to be able to fulfill this agreement? What do we need to renegotiate? And I think it moves out of feeling state and into actual action state. And I think that it takes away the idea of, I'm going to have a hard conversation with my employee because they're not doing what they should be doing. Well, it doesn't have to be hard. It could just be a matter of fact. Hey, this is what we agreed to. What's going on?
So it sounds like, and thank you for defining that, Julie. I'm going to give you an opportunity to come in with anything else that you'd add before we transition to another question. But it sounds like what you're defining there, and Scott, is that an expectation is an assumption in a lot of ways. It's like it's not something that two parties have mutually decided is the facts of how things will be or what the goal and objective is. It's an assumption of how it should be, and the other person might not even be informed of that assumption. So how could they possibly succeed in an assumption that's sitting and residing in your consciousness and not for public knowledge, right? So Julie, let's go over to you.
100%, Tim. I would say that's a great way to summarize it, and I think it happens quite often in all kinds of relationships, from family to friends to business to acquaintances. We assume they should be doing things the way that we feel they should be done, and that weight of that highlighting that word feeling. I feel it should be done this way, so it should be that way.
Julie,
I love how this is coming full circle. So yes, expectations tend to be one-sided, unspoken, and like you said, within our consciousness, not necessarily clear with the other person. And a week ago today, I led my leadership focus group in our master's program about an amazing article of the top 12 expectations people generally have in which they suffer. And one of them, which I thought was so humorous, was the expectation that people in the left lane or the fast lane won't go slowly. And so it can be a rule. It can be, hey, why is this jerk in the left lane? But we can tend to suffer when we have an expectation that somebody is going to do something that we wouldn't do. And so the bottom line of both the article and the conversation we had is around, as Scott said, turning expectations into agreements and not having this upset within us. And we can tend to expect things that align with our values. So you heard me say, I feel inspired when my leader connects with me, when I feel community. I could have a leader that doesn't believe in that at all. And so I would have this expectation that they're missing the mark or that I'm disappointed by something. So I think this is such a key piece of leadership, because oftentimes all three of us will coach people that have an upset, but it just wasn't spoken. So one of the actions coming from this portion of our conversation would be to speak it and using I language. I would love if you'd show up to our meetings on time. Could you agree to that? Or I would love if when we meet, you'd be prepared. Is that something you can agree to? And so it clears so much friction in relationships by speaking it. And it was a really cool top 12 article we had a really deep conversation on. So I think there's a lot out there on expectations and how people suffer when they hold them.
Oh, I'm going on record as calling bullshit. Okay, if you're in the left lane, get the fuck over to the right lane, because you're not supposed to be driving slow in the left lane. Okay, sorry. All right, let's move on to the next time. Let's move on to learn from the Italians. If you go to Italy and you're in the left lane, you could be driving 150 kilometers an hour and you're going to have somebody on your tail right behind you, because that is for passing only, not for cruise control. All right.
In the US though, Tim, that's called a police officer.
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to ask that you be concise with this, because I want to move on to some other topics, but I don't want to shortchange it. So I know I've just put you in a predicament there by asking you to be tight, but not shortchange. Okay. So you guys coach. I'm just going to rattle off, like, a brag on you guys for a minute of some of the people you coach. I mean, you coach, Craig Strant, Josh Meadow, Ryan Grant, Robert Coomer, Michael Kalai, oh gosh, forgive me to anybody else who's listening whose names I'm not mentioning. I mean, there's just such a long list. Josh Meadow, Chris Ledley, Mark Robertson. I mean, Danny Harani, the list goes on and on. I mean, some of the best in the business. What are the common traits that you see in the successful business professionals? We'll start with you, Julie. Maybe list 3 or 4 out, or 2 or 3, whatever you got, and then we'll move to you, Scott.
Sure, I'll give 3. Good at implementation and doing what they say they'll do. Clear that the relationship comes first, and being with the person or being kind to the person that they lead or with whom they work is important. And not afraid of having conflicting conversations when they know it will get to a better place. So those are 3 hallmarks of top leaders, willing to do the hard stuff to get to the win.
Before I go to you, Scott, and your list is totally fine, it doesn't have to be segmented to leadership. Okay, so I realize that I may not have clarified that. So it can also be, Scott, just what are the 3, 4, 2, 3, whatever it is, common denominators that you see in the successful people that you coach? What do they do well?
I think they have a really strong focus. I think they're persistent, and they have some incredible habits.
Tell us more about the habits. Like, what are some of the habits that you see that might, let's think of the listener here, and what might they be able to glean from the habits that they could implement themselves?
Well, I think some of the habits obviously are that come from our program, but I think everybody has their own ingrained habits. I think that one of the things that I see them do quite often is really pay attention to self-care, including creating some kind of morning routine or a routine at night. Maybe focusing in on their clearing their psyche, or making sure that their body is in a healthy state so that they can have energy. I think most of them have a really strong routine or habit that allows them to be able to have a lot of energy. And if you say what could be done, meditation in the morning, exercise, all those, we could go in, but I'll list a lot of those and talk through a lot of those. But I think it really starts with the self-care and paying attention to their needs first, so that they can lead with a ton of energy, enthusiasm, excitement, and clarity.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. I know what a big fan you are of this book. The three of us had to read this book when we were at the University of Santa Monica, and I'm going to make a suggestion right now to piggyback off of what Scott just shared. The book is written by Schwartz and Lohr, Loehr or Loeher. I'm not sure. Schwartz and Lohr, and the name of the book is The Power of Full Engagement. And that book is a deep dive into what Scott was just describing of something that he sees as a commonality among the successful clients that he coaches, which they have a routine for energy renewal. That's so important and vital. You have to have a process that allows you to unplug, renew your energy, so you can go back at it with focus, clarity, and accuracy when it's go time, right? And it really focuses, for those of you that like sports, it really focuses on, it's actually that they refer to it as the corporate athlete. Okay, so they did a lot of their work, Schwartz and Lohr, with some of the great athletes on the planet, the Andre Agassi's, the Yvonne Lendls, golfers, etc. But then they found the link between that and success in business. So great share there to both of you. So let me actually now go to, I want to ask you another very specific question. I want to get tactical and practical. What is one tip from each of you? We'll start with you, Scott. And it could be a business or a life tip that you're personally implementing that has had a huge impact, either in your business or in your life. Up to you, Scott.
I think the most impactful one, if I was going to say there's a lot of them, right? But the most impactful one is getting organized and having a personal dashboard. I think that it's one of the most freeing things that I've ever done for myself. I continue to be amazed by any time I help a client implement one for themselves, how much, I would say, lift they get in business and in life by just having that. It frees your mind. It allows you to really become creative again. And I don't think enough people utilize a personal dashboard, even though they think they have a system that works. But I think that once we start really wrapping our minds around it and our heads around it, their system is disorganized, and it can be so easy. And I say this: I did not have a personal dashboard before I started working with performance experts, and it has definitely changed my life.
I'm not surprised that it's changed your life, and I'm glad that it has. And I know I don't need to sell Julie on that, because she's as black belt as they get when it comes to the execution of a personal dashboard. For those of you that have not watched the time management video that Julie and I just did for Celebrity, we go into a lot more depth on that subject matter. But for the time being, I'm just going to point you all into a specific direction. I would go check out YouTube and type in Todoist, Todoist. It is a web-based application platform for a personal dashboard. There's lots of tutorials out there on it. The three of us use it. In fact, our whole company uses it. And I would just reiterate what Scott said, that like, I can't even imagine like living my life as complex as it is without having a personal dashboard to keep me organized. It has had a huge, huge impact on my mental acuity, my peace of mind, and my execution. Like, I just get more done because I know what I have to do, versus trying to remember what I have to do and forgetting and being frustrated and stressed out because I'm wondering what else I've forgotten. So Julie, over to you. One thing, personal or business, that you've implemented that you think moves the needle.
A morning routine, and the specific portion of the morning routine is what I do before I get out of bed in the morning. I have a morning routine where I write down my dreams and I write down.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're talking about the lady who is the queen of sleep here. This is a woman who could put down 13, 14 straight without even waking up to go pee. Keep going. I want to hear about your morning routine.
And as Lauren Schwartz said in The Power of Full Engagement, I think it's important to get, I believe, a minimum of 7 hours of sleep, but I can almost double that after one of our retreats.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, not having my phone by my bed has been a game changer. I did Mel Robbins' Mindset Reset back in 2018, and my phone is in my bathroom, which is a number of steps away from my bed. I do not touch my phone in the morning. I wake up to an alarm. I write down my dreams, and then I flip to a page in that same notebook and I write down a gratitude list. Why do I do this? Because how you start your day ends up how you live your day. And for people that wake up and react and look at email and get surprised by texts or reminders, that's the worst way to start the day. So before my feet hit the ground, that's what I do. And throughout my morning, when I get coffee, I'll look at my phone because stimulation of coffee is similar to the stimulation of a phone. But that is one of the game-changing practices I've put in place to have a calm, restorative, easeful morning where I'm not diving into work right when my eyes open up. And for anybody who thinks I can't do this because, just wake up 5 minutes earlier, 10 minutes earlier. It's more of the consistency and the reliability of the process than it is what you do. Mine just really helps me transition into the wake state in a very gradual and supportive way.
Yeah, I want to add to that, going back to what Scott, or how I teed up Scott, I mean, that list of highly successful loan originators that I rattled off, a great percentage of them execute very, very strongly on their morning routine. Some of them get up as early as 4 o'clock in the morning, which is way before I wake. But when you think about it, just logically, what Julie was saying is so important, right? Like, does it really make sense to whiplash yourself from being asleep and restful and renewal and rejuvenation time to just whiplashing yourself directly into turning your brain on quickly, jacking yourself up with caffeine, chasing down emails, looking at social media, reading about the war in Russia, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, that doesn't actually make a lot of sense. There needs to be a transition to like ease yourself into the chaos of life, the busyness, et cetera. And that's why having a transitional morning routine is so, so critical. Let's get personal now. I'll start with you, Julie. Who's a teacher, the first teacher of yours that comes to mind that had a profound impact on you, and what specifically is the impact that that person had?
I would say his role was titled Dad, but my dad taught me about financial management very early. Give you an example. I was 8, maybe I was 6, my sister was 8. We were given allowances and we had a little budget sheet. Very simply, we got $1 every week, and I had to write down on this budget sheet where I allocated that money, and I had to show it to my dad on Sunday nights, and then I got my next dollar. Why that's so important is I learned to give a quarter to church, and then I could give 75 other cents or save them elsewhere in my life. And so the power of money management and tracking has been a game changer in life. So I do feel like he's not a teacher by trade. His job was dad, but Dick Weix did an amazing job giving me education and the experience of understanding money and how to use it.
I've never heard that story, and it totally makes so much sense. Like, I mean, you are a great custodian of money, on both a personal level, but also within our business practices. and you just earned yourself the right to track the dollars again in Costa Rica in December. Thank you so much for volunteering, Julie. Scott, over to you. What do you got?
Well, I've got to go with the same teacher, right? So I can say mom and dad, and they're both different in different ways. But dad, which I think has had a profound impact in life and what we've even talked about today, which is my dad said to me very early on, Scott, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And as a young man, very young man, actually, when he told me that, I didn't fully understand it, and it just continues to unfold more and more and more. So that to me has been a game changer, to use a Julie term, for me in my life, in the sense of that it's just an incredible way of living your life. And if you can attach to that and know that when you believe in yourself, you can accomplish just about anything you want.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's so interesting how our parents have such a profound impact on us, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy. My mom was just here for the last couple of days with Liz and I was just reflecting like last night at dinner on how there's a couple of personality qualities that I exhibit that are her 101, right? Like I learned those things through osmosis from her. All right, let's take you back to your 18-year-old self now. So Scott, you're 18 years old again. You have all the wisdom that you currently possess. What's the advice that you're giving to that 18-year-old version of you that you wish you would have had back then?
This is a kind of a deep one, Tim, that I'll try to answer it. The 18-year-old version of myself was a really hard driver and was in a real hell of a hurry to get stuff done. And so I would say that the advice I would give myself as an 18-year-old is one is slow down, enjoy yourself more, and connect more. Because I wasn't doing a lot of that at 18.
Yeah. And the connection part, it's actually interesting because right now I have a new client and he's my favorite client of all time. It's my son. And I say that humorously, but quite literally in the sense that we've been spending a lot of time on Zoom calls lately with me helping him in his career. And it's been really great because he's been coming to me a lot and I love it. I love the fact that he wants me to be involved. And I actually even have a Zoom call with him and his attorney this afternoon. So I'm looking forward to that. And one of the things that I keep sharing with him is what you just shared, which is, man, it's just, life is just so much about connection. Like the more connections you have, the more that things just get a lot easier. You know, the universe conspires, right? Like if you're good to people and you connect with people and you care about people, I think the universe just starts to comply and put great people into your life that will end up leading you down paths that will be beautiful for you. So I've been really trying to coach him on that about like, look, this is just about the most friends, man. As I've been saying, the loan officer with the most friends wins. And in his case, the director with the most friends wins for his film career. So yeah, that's some great wisdom that you'd give to your 18-year-old self. And I hope everybody really took that in because the cultivation and building of relationships is something that really never ends. Actually makes life a lot more enjoyable too. You know, I was actually sharing last night with my mom and Liz at dinner that one of the things that I feel so grateful for about my career is, and I'm sure you guys feel this way as well, is this is actually an appropriate time for me to throw up another picture here before we go over to Julie and she gives advice to her 18-year-old self. You know, just like how lucky we are to just have all these amazing people in our life, you know, like we've been really blessed to cultivate relationships with so many people. And that's what makes life just that much more enjoyable, right? Like, I mean, we get to just laugh and connect. And as life goes on, there are a few things that are more important than the number of friendships you have and the quality of those friendships. So Julie, let's talk to the little Julie, the one who's got her Excel spreadsheet out when she's 18 and she knows all the pivot tables and she's budgeting the hell out of herself. I mean, she's
saving 30%.
She's got more wisdom than her CPA and she's only 18. What advice are you giving to her?
Seeing those photos just dropped me into my heart so much. And I do think what you all were talking about with connections is so important and enjoying the moment. The Julie, who was 18, who went off to college, was so excited to depart small town in the Detroit area and go to the big wide world. And what I would step back in and give that Julie as advice is you have more choices than you think you have. Or if I were to phrase it differently for the people that are listening, consider all the options available to you. I think at 18, college was on my mind, and then getting a job and making these very linear decisions that were expected at that age, but considering all the options, considering taking, if I would have thought of it at the time, a gap year or doing an internship far beyond what I might have considered at that time. So the world is so big. And as you talk about your son, Trey, I know he did a gap year and there were things he did to expand himself instead of stepping through the 4-year college and the job. So the advice I'd give Julie is connect and consider that there's way more options available to you than you otherwise think.
I want to unpack that last part, because I would imagine that most people that are listening to this show today are thinking, well, that's easy to say when you're 22, 23 years old, or when you're 18 years old, you have a lot less responsibilities. You're locked into life a lot less stringently, right? Than you are, when you're 40 and you have 3 kids or 50 and 2 mortgages or a career, et cetera. But I think that's a limiting belief, again, I get back to what I was saying earlier. It's still a choice. It's never too late to consider what other choices you might have that you're not seeing, right? Like, I'm not certainly not trying to get people to quit their job, but like, if you're not happy in your job, then what's the point? And maybe there's another role with the same company for you that is more suited for you. Or, if you're not happy with the quality of your friendships in your life right now, then what are you doing about that? Like, are you actively out there looking to build new friendships? If you're not happy with the quality of your relationship with your kids, what are you doing about that? Like, you could tell me all day long that you don't have enough time because you have too many hours you have to work and you just don't have enough time to spend one-on-one with your kids, as an example. It's like, okay, but that's a choice, right?
Correct.
So you guys want to unpack that any further? Go ahead.
I do.
Something to say. Go ahead.
When you teach about time management, Tim, you reframe it to choice management. And I think that's what we're speaking about. What are the choices available to us? I was coaching one of our clients yesterday who's extremely busy with a lot of kids and crazy amounts of work to do. And my suggestion to him was slow it down and take some time away. And what we came up with, I said, what about a Friday afternoon into a Saturday? And you go away, you take Friday afternoon off, do some journaling, slow it down, stay off technology, spend the night at a hotel, and then you come back to your family and your kids and everything Saturday midday. And it took a few attempts for him to consider, yeah, I could do that. Because the narrative is, I'm so busy, I have kids' sports, my spouse needs me, I couldn't leave my team. And we explored and released those limiting beliefs of I can't because. But the emotion he was feeling with giving himself time and choice was, I feel guilty. And so to the point you were making, and even what I said about you have more choices available than you could consider, when we give ourselves new ways to think, or when we try on new activities or behaviors that we might not otherwise think, so much can come in. And I think that is not only a piece from coaching, but also questioning, what am I believing about my life? And as you two know, I moved to Austin as a result of that fear setting process. And I never considered I'd be living this life I'm living a year and 3 months later. But that choice and that decision to look at a belief and a fear I was holding really catapulted me into an amazing experience. And so whether it's learning to swim or reading new books or traveling to new countries, I think that's part of this life experience, is giving yourself things that you otherwise might not give and seeing what comes from them.
We could go down a total rabbit hole here, and we won't for the sake of time, but I'll address this a bit in the coaching debrief after this interview is over with. But boy, you hit on an important topic there with guilt. I mean, we guilt the crap out of ourselves all the time, with all these old stories from our childhood as to what selfishness looks like, and all these things that we have misdefined. Scott, you have anything you'd like to add before I transition to our final question?
Yeah, you said we could go down a rabbit hole, and I do have a lot to add. So maybe I'll just let you button it up here, and I don't think what I'm going to share is going to be short.
Well, we could do another call, just do
Okay.
another one. I mean, this is the only time we're going to do a podcast together.
I'll just say this is that every our life is a series of choices, and the choices that we opt into or feel like we need to opt into are what bind us to say can bind us to some unhappiness. And so no matter what state we're in, if we want to change that, we have the ability to change it. And there's nothing off limits. We just put the limits on ourselves, similar to, like, say, that picture of an elephant being attached to a chair with a rope and not moving because it believes at its heart it can't, even though it really can. So we can take the chains off ourselves if we're willing and brave enough to do that.
Yeah, well said, well said. And I am going to earmark guilt we could do a whole podcast on guilt. I mean, I think it could be actually really powerful. So final question, I'll start with you, Scott. Let's finish up with the subject matter of self-care, because we've kind of touched upon it a little bit here and there, but I think it's such an important topic. I mean, the more that we do this work, the more that I'm doing Zoom calls for celebrity, and it's incredible to me to feel the energy on those Zoom calls of people that are craving for how they could take better care of themselves. And the three of us aren't perfect, but we try our very best to model what we teach, and we try to practice self-care ourselves. So let's hear it from the two coaches here. What is self-care to you, and what are some very specific suggestions that you have for people about how they could take good care of themselves?
Well, let me just start by saying, with self-care, when I first started trying to bring in self-care into my life, it ended up being just another task, another thing I was doing. And what I learned over the years of really focusing on it was I wanted to start having more fun with it and have variety and not be locked into something all the time. So for me, self-care really has a lot to do with variety and fun. And so I like to try to do different things. I create challenges for myself. I do a Peloton challenge usually every month, and this year I did it for the first 3 months. And I want to make sure that my sleep is handled. So I got this thing right here called the Aura Ring, which is very practical. It tracks my sleep from it helps me it tells me how my sleep is doing. Exercise, mindset, I meditate, I do yoga. I don't do it all religiously. I focus time on it, and I do certain things. But I do it. So it is incorporated into my life in a way that for a period of time, I will focus on meditation. For a period of time, I will focus on yoga. For a period of time, I will focus on my sleep. For a period of time, I will focus on making sure that I have enough movement in the day, and continuing to add tools like this Aura Ring, like the Apple Watch, again, challenging, bringing myself into challenges with other people, clients, friends, family, and making it so that I've put out a goal and and stepping into those goals. I know that you, for example, Tim, I think you said one time recently you've meditated for X number of days straight. And, that's just not the kind of self-care I do. I do meditate, again, like I said, but I do it in a variety of ways. And I don't do it all at once, and I haven't stuck to one thing all the time. But I do have a series of things. There's times when I journal for a while, and I'll journal for a month at a time, or 6 weeks, or maybe 3 months. And then I move on to do something else that excites me and that moves into fun. So for me, self-care is very personal, and it can be fun, and I try to make it fun, and it can be new, which I need the newness, but I want to make sure that I'm continuing to do it all the time.
Thank you. Julie, over to you.
My base self-care is treating myself like my own best friend. And so some of the things Scott mentioned are practices I have in place. And I consider during a day, what do I need? I drink a ton of water, a ton of beverages. Why? Because it feels good to me. I like gardening all of a sudden now that I have a yard, and there's things that I like to do to connect with the earth. I would even say that whatever I do when it resets my nervous system or when it calms me down and I can feel it, that feels like self-care. And even walking my dog and getting outside, I never take technology with me. I don't listen to music or podcasts. I just walk my dog and I'm present with my neighbors when I say hello, and I'm in the moment. And so there's many practices, some of which are in my morning routine, but checking in with myself throughout the day and checking my levels of energy. And sometimes I'll come to 7 at night and I'm exhausted. And that's a time I'm going to stop working, get off technology, and do something to fill my bucket, whether it's meditating or this online exercise class I do. But ultimately, it's, let's say, looking back at the end of the day and the end of the week and seeing how I feel. And right now on a Friday, I'm feeling really good. So as much as I worked hard this week, the self-care practices I put in place made me feel good. Even things which I know you guys haven't mentioned, like I get flowers delivered. I get this gorgeous box of flowers delivered once or twice, like every other week, I should say. And I love arranging the flowers and enjoying their beauty. And in my home here in Austin, I do nice things and decorate it well because it feels good. So it can be more than doing. It can be things like that, or like having people over, or going to get tacos in the morning, or going hiking in the morning, which I do with a friend once a week. But activities that fill my bucket so I'm my best. I see you smiling, so there must be something good.
Morning tacos. I've never heard that as a part of someone's self-care program, but hey, if it works for you, that's why it's called self-care, right? Because
Right.
It's for you, whatever works for you.
Yeah, and in closing, there's this amazing taco joint a friend and I go to at the end of our hikes, and they don't have the right kind of cream for coffee, but they suggested putting horchata into their coffee, which is a Mexican drink, and it's so good. So my friend and I will get coffee with horchata after drinking sometimes. And these are just little things. They don't take a lot of time, but it makes me feel good, makes me feel loved, and helps me do better in my day. So I'll end with that.
Thank you. And I'll just add a little bit of my own on top of that to end this. So, like I said, self-care, right? Like let's analyze the word. It's about taking care of yourself, and it therefore has to be personal to you. I mean, if you're implementing somebody else's self-care strategy, it's probably not going to be, what's best for you. And I think that my suggestion is that you tune into your feelings, because your feelings are what are going to tell you what is self-restorative for you. So Julie and I are very different human beings, as an example. So what her self-care is, like, I don't do morning tacos. That's not my thing. I'd probably have heartburn all day. But in all seriousness, like what I was like last week, I was just on a quick little, business trip down to Costa Rica, and every single moment that I had, like I grabbed a surfboard at the beach club and I got out on the water. And like Liz loves to just swim next to me while I'm catching waves, and we just laugh. And it's like, she said to me, she's like, you're just like a little boy. Like, you're so happy when you're out here. I'm like, I know, I just love it. Like I could do it every day. It makes me happy. And then we played pickleball for the first time with Andrea. We met her at the pickleball courts and we had a blast. And I was just running around like a whirling dervish chasing after that ball. And I just like, for me, it's things that are where my body's in movement. And if it has a little competition, even better. And I like to be outdoors. So like the point is, knowing that about yourself and then saying, okay, like this is healthy for me. Like this is what lights me up, and I'm going to do this on a consistent basis. In fact, I'm going to make this a bigger priority than most anything else in my life, because if I do this, everybody else gets to experience the better version of me. So to Scott's point, I'm a avid meditator, and you like meditating in stretches and then checking out and doing something in replacement of that, which is fantastic. Like, I think that the point that you're making there, Scott, that's so vitally important is, like, I've found myself, like, especially with yoga as an example, when I was doing yoga religiously for years, is I got to the point where it's like, I was doing yoga, but it wasn't really doing yoga. Like, I was like just checking the box. I didn't really want to be on the mat. So what's the point? Like, I really want to be on a surfboard. you know, I really love that. So it's like the key thing is are you doing it because you feel like you have to, or you feel like this is what you're supposed to do? Or are you doing it because you're really being your own best friend and giving that gift to yourself, like Julie said? So give some consideration, gang, to what are the things, and in closing, a lot of the times your childhood will give you the clues you need. What did you like to do when you were young, before life got serious? What are the things that were fun for you? That can actually can return some of that vital energy back to your consciousness if you're engaging in those things. So, hey guys, we're right at the 90-minute mark as planned. It certainly was a pleasure. I want to thank you both for taking time out of your schedule and sharing some of your personal wisdom and experiences. You guys have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
This was great. This was fun. I say we do it again and we get into that emotional place of guilt or some of the inner stuff that we've been exploring. I think that could be super fun. Thank you.
Right on. We will do it again for sure.
Yeah, I think it as well. I also think it was fun, and obviously it's our first time doing this. And I just want to say that I would love to do this again and dive deeper, like Julie said, in things like guilt and even fear. And I know there's a lot of other amazing topics that could be really helpful for just about anybody.
Right on. I'll see you guys next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in for this 90 minutes. Stay tuned for the post podcast coaching that comes along with this, and hope that you are enjoying your spring, and as this is being aired in May of 2022, and we'll have more podcasts coming to you from the 360 in the months to come. Thanks a lot.